Okay, so now we're going to drill down a little bit from the community level, which you could consider maybe an entire city or urban area or MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, as it's called, to more neighborhood dynamics. Okay, so these are uh, communities within communities. So, what defines a neighborhood? Typically, it's going to be uh, geographic or some kind of boundary. Okay, so you can even have things like roads or freeways that cut through an area that are going to separate one neighborhood from another, or you could have a lake or a stream or um, a railroad tracks. These are all gonna. There's gonna be oftentimes, some kind of physical boundary that is going to separate one neighborhood from another. You can also have neighborhoods defined by the architecture and the type of housing or the type of buildings that are kind of in that particular neighborhood. So the design and the look and feel of a place can differentiate one neighborhood from another. Green spaces and parks. So I lived in Sacramento for a number of years, and a lot of the neighborhoods are actually named after the parks that are kind of at the center of that neighborhood. So Curtis Park, for example, Tahoe Park, McKinley Park. These are all parks that exist there and have neighborhoods that kind of surround them. Even in Manhattan, you have Central Park West, Central Park North. These are different neighborhoods that are kind of defined as as by their proximity to Central Park. You can also have cultural or social reasons for a neighborhood to exist. So, for example, in San Francisco, you have Japantown and Chinatown. These are places where there's a large demographic of those particular populations or some historical reason why they kind of attracted those ethnicities. And even though they may not be predominantly occupied by those ethnicities now, that neighborhood formed due to those particular cultural reasons. So neighborhoods change and the demographics of neighborhoods change over time. You can look at an example of Harlem in New York City. It started off when New York City first was founded. A lot of Dutch people lived there, and after the Civil War, after the kind of people from the South, especially former slaves, started moving around to different parts of the country, Harlem kind of became a place where a lot of them settled in New York, and so you had a a a kind of what was known as the Harlem Renaissance, where kind of black culture came to dominate that neighborhood, and the demographics of that particular area shifted. And even now, I think if you look at Harlem now, it's changed a lot since kind of the heyday of the Harlem Renaissance, and just given property value and rents, etc. If you go there now, it's not going to be the same Harlem as it was back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, etc. This kind of is related to this next item of usage and gentrification. So even the uses of neighborhoods change over time. You may have some area that was used for industrial purposes that was later transformed into a residential area. Um, so, for example, again, I live in Sacramento. I can tell you that there's a really big development happening kind of close to the downtown area where there's a former rail yard. And so that whole rail yard district is going to be converted into mixed use. It's going to have retail, residential. They're going to build a hospital there. So the usage of that particular area has is going to significantly change. Just given the trends in population growth and economic growth, it's hard to think of a situation where there is a place that had a very high density use or like like a residential area that was converted into a kind of lower impact use like retail or industrial. Um, but uh, typically, it's like raw land is converted into some uh, commercial use, and then eventually becomes residential as kind of the industry has drawn economics and people move to that area. So the typical trend is for industrial areas or commercial areas to become residential where people live, rather than the other way around. Gentrification refers to the idea that basically a an area, and typically this is residential like neighborhoods, where it's kind of low income, or people are poor, or the property values are lower. Uh, it starts drawing higher income people into the neighborhood, either through redevelopment or through economic changes. And those higher income people cause the demand for property, rental property, etc., to increase, and therefore drive up the prices and the rents for the existing people. Now, if you are a owner of property in that area that's gentrifying, that's good for you because then the property you own is worth much more than it used to be. But if you're a renter, you are probably going to be unhappy because the rents are going to go up and you're going to have to pay more, unless there's some kind of rent control ordinance in place. There's a funny story that I've kind of followed, or it's not a story, it's more like an illustration of the trade-offs of gentrification, where Trader Joe's was first accused by activists of creating food deserts, meaning neighborhoods where there was no real access to kind of fresh fruits and vegetables, and higher quality foods, by not opening their stores in certain kind of lower income areas and neighborhoods. And when they started doing that, it actually Trader Joe's is such a popular kind of grocery store, and people want to live close to them, that it's actually started gentrifying the neighborhood. So the fact that a Trader Joe's opened up in a lower income area, it started attracting higher income people to live in that area. And so then Trader Joe's got criticized for causing gentrification. So this is one example of people who are not thinking about trade-offs, just being angry. You can't ever please this type of person, because they just don't understand trade-offs. Where if there's going to be some reaction from every action, and so in the case of poor Trader Joe's, they got criticized both for avoiding certain neighborhoods, and then when they didn't avoid those neighborhoods, getting criticized for causing gentrification. Okay, so let's talk about the life cycle of a neighborhood. So initially, a neighborhood is going to get established and it's going to grow. Okay, so um, maybe it's raw land that there's a new subdivision or development that's built on it. People start moving in, the population starts growing. It's the first stage. Then at some point, that neighborhood becomes kind of fully occupied. It's stable, the population is stable, the property values are stable. Then there's going to be some catalyst for decline. It could be that, for example, in Houston, okay, uh, if you live in kind of a newer built suburban area, it's usually really popular. Like right now, I believe it's Katy, which is kind of a suburb of Houston. But after 20, 30, 40 years, the housing there starts getting older, the infrastructure starts kind of breaking down. And given the fact that Houston has a lot of room to expand, there will be a new neighborhood that's built. At least that's been the trend for the last, 30, 40, 50 years, where an area that's newly built is kind of the popular neighborhood, and then over time, a newer neighborhood gets built, and that neighborhood kind of declines. So, when I was growing up, I have family from Houston. It was Sugarland, Texas. That was kind of the uh, a suburb where people wanted to live. Now that Sugarland is 30, 40 years old, it's not as popular as this new one I mentioned, Katy. So Sugarland is kind of, you can maybe argue, declining. And then at some point, and this is especially true of areas that are located near urban cores. So neighborhoods that were located in urban cores that kind of became run down and dilapidated, and people moved out, and maybe lower income people moved in. just given their like good geographic location, maybe close to employment, close to downtown areas where there's a lot of office space, and maybe more walkability. These places, uh, through maybe the local leadership, or some kind of intervention, became areas that attracted investment and revitalization. So when revitalization happens, there'll be maybe there'll be old buildings that get knocked down and newer ones come up, and hiring can people start moving in. This is when a neighborhood kind of can experience a renewal and rebirth.